Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the post-game, super exciting, extra special winning edition of the Jakl Den podcast. Joining me once again, a man who's been hitting the town, been seen riding around here and there, Chicago, Boston, Mass. He's back home where he belongs. Rick Collins, man, it's a joy to have you back, man.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. It does feel like I've been out for a couple of weeks, but it was good to see the boys at the different stadiums, get the experience of watching matches at two different stadiums, very different from what we have, in fact. So getting around and getting to see what the options are in terms of game day experiences is always worthwhile. I'm excited. We're going to get another one of those experiences in 2 weeks when we head down to Houston. But before we talk about that, we've got a big weekend that we just had, the biggest weekend in the history of Dallas professional rugby to talk about. But before we get to that, I want to make sure that everybody's aware we will be traveling in numbers to Houston in 2 weeks. I'm going to be gathering up data and seeing if we can get a nice package of tickets, potentially a hotel discount if I can figure that out. And hopefully we're all sitting in the same section for a very exciting follow-up to this weekend's match. I'm also going to look into an away match watch party. We'll try and organize something. I'm going to get a hold of the Jackals this week, see where we are on that, and we will get something set in stone by the end of this week. Other than that, there's not a lot of news in terms of the club. We are still working behind the scenes on a lot of different projects. I've had calls with several people, including somebody who is working with Exeter College on a big event that would be happening in Dallas. So exciting stuff to come, and we will release that news as it comes.
Always better at the announcements. You're so much more professional than me. I'll work on
what are the announcements for the Dallas Jackals? I think we had one big one at the end of the game, not game related, but player related.
What was that?
Big Mike.
Big Mike. Yeah, so I saw him in the stands. I ran up and said, "Hey, bro, what's going on?" And he's like, "I'll be out there next game." I had a chance to talk with that guy for a bit. He's ready. I love the way that guy is when he's on the pitch. He's such a big, proper unit, but he doesn't move like a big guy. He's got some speed to him, and really more than anything, he just seemed like he's just a smiling guy. I mean, He's just like he gets out there and destroys people, but he does it with a smile. And I think maybe
that's standard Fijian rugby, though.
Yeah, that's
you get out there
and
you run people over and you smile while doing it.
So he was happy. It was good to see him out there at the game, obviously. So obviously be looking very much forward to the return of a guy that, not to say that our locks could use a backup, but you know what?
They need a break to be. They played 3 or 4 matches in a row. The two of those guys, Burr and Gola. And unfortunately, when you've only got one win, there aren't really a whole lot of breaks, but they need some time.
So it'll be good to have him back out there. Before we get into this, man, something I wanted to bring up because I'm sure you had 1,000 questions, but man, Big Rick Collins hitting Chicago, getting on TV to promote this fan club, man. I mean, like we were.
Is that the first televised instance of a fan club getting recognition?
From my memory, yeah, man, because I can't remember anybody really getting anything like that. And then, you could tell you were freezing, like everything was frozen, but you had to get out there. They were trying to keep it brief because the game was going on. Talk about a little bit about that environment there, because this is where the final is going to be held this year. Yeah. What was the stadium environment like there in Chicago, man?
And I think the weather really killed it. I think it would have been a much more exciting environment had the weather been good and you had two teams that weren't, bottom of the bracket, struggling. So when your team is not playing well and it's 19 degrees outside and the stadium is, let me quote the person who sat 3 rows behind us, 2-hour drive. from where she was in North Chicago. Yeah, I think a lot of people probably didn't make it out that would have otherwise been there. So
How far is it outside of Chicago?
it's
Like,
not that terribly far. Now we stayed near Midway Airport, and it's about 15 minutes south of Midway Airport. But
okay.
Midway Airport is on the southeast side of Chicago. So it's a decent distance outside the city. It's not dissimilar to living in the North Dallas Richardson area and driving out to Arlington.
So
I'd
it's
say
about the
it's
same
similar. Yeah.
distance.
So it's not ideal setting in terms of, closeness to the city, accessibility to fans. There's no public transport as far as I could tell that went out there. There was no train station nearby, that sort of thing. Large parking lot. The stadium is in good condition, and I think has enough going for it, that it's going to be a good setting with good weather in the summer. So cross our fingers it's not like 100 degrees in Chicago this summer, that they get a mild summer and you get a game that's in the mid 70s, low 80s, something like that. I think would be a very good experience out there. I think Chicago also has a lot going for it in terms of a place that people want to visit. So I don't hate it. And I really think that Chicago seems to have kind of their marketing and sales presence pretty strong. So I think they are going to market the heck out of this championship game. And I would say 10 to 12,000 fans would be my guess. I think you would get more fans in San Diego this year, but San Diego also is, if you're a New York fan and New York's playing in it, for example, that's a long trip. So
yeah, you're looking at a haul to get out to San Diego.
So I think, having a place that's central in the country and that's going to have cross your fingers, good weather in the summer, Chicago is not a bad choice.
Not bad. So then you came home for a bit, and then you headed out east to Boston, Quincy, Massachusetts. I remember, obviously, us in the Jackal Den, we got the picture of the Uber ride you took from Boston to Quincy. About how far was Quincy, Mass, outside of Boston?
Not bad. So that was really about a 25, 30-minute drive. There was some traffic, but not terrible. And I really loved the experience at what they're really calling Fort Quincy, the stadium there. It's a smaller stadium. It feels more set for rugby outside of the fact that there's lines all over the dang field. We had talked about this before, if that field was permanently a rugby only facility, maybe also had soccer on it, for example, I think it would be a prettier visual on TV and easier to, see the space on the field while you're there at the stadium. But it's a much smaller stadium than Chicago, much smaller than what we have in Arlington. But I think that, they fill the stadium pretty well. And the experience that they bring, Maggleby's done an amazing job up there. Marketing, obviously, we all agree they have the number one marketing team. But also, I think just in terms of fan experience, once you're inside the stadium, where you can get beer. I mean, literally, you walk down, the stairs and the seats, walk out, and right as you're exiting the stands, there's a beer stand on your left. There's a food stand directly in front of you, about 20 yards, and then the bathrooms are just behind the beer stand. So convenience to everything. And the fans were phenomenal. I had a great experience here. I don't think we spent $1 the entire time we were there. So just the fan experience was phenomenal. The people there were great. And we loved being in Boston. And now I will say, we need to reverse when we're playing these teams. We should be playing Chicago and New England in the summer there, and playing them at home here, this time of year. It made no sense to be, going up there early March, mid-March, when the weather's still pretty crappy. So
Well,
it was
I had
about
a yeah,
38 degrees, 40 degrees, and rainy
yeah.
in New England. So
Yeah.
despite the weather, we had a blast.
I had a chance to talk to the Toronto GM last night
Yeah.
before the game, and they have yet to host a home game this year for obvious reasons, being that it's Toronto, Canada. But then I brought up the New England and the Chicago thing, and it's like, really, is the temperature really much different? And he was like, not really.
Mm.
But he kind of was in the agreement that, like, hey, maybe we should have these northern teams go south and then the southern teams go north at the end. But that's
Yeah.
all within the league office. They make
Yeah, and I still
decisions.
think you can mix it together. Toronto doesn't need to play 6, 7 games in a row on the road. I mean,
Yeah.
you could mix in a home game. Maybe you go two away matches, 2 home matches, and then 3 away matches, and then mix it for the rest of the season. But at least give them a couple of home games so they can stay at home for a couple of weeks and get some good sleep, because when these teams aren't throwing around a ton of money, it's tough on the road.
Oh yeah, always. Any sport, it's always going to be a tough, long run.
Well, it's especially tough when you don't have your own planes that will fly you, and you're not
Yeah.
booked out the top hotel near you're
Uh,
not eating 5-star hotel or restaurant food on the road. So we know these guys are maybe sometimes having a couple of sandwiches during the day. So they've got to figure out a way to get a few of these north teams some home matches early in the season, but it's going to be tough. The weather is a challenge in this sport.
Definitely. And like I said, the time of year that they run this league, they do it at the time of the year that's optimal, when you don't have football going on, when you
Yeah.
don't have you kind of get that they start it at the right time of year.
Yeah.
And it's just the nature of the beast here in North America. I mean, if you even look at Major League Soccer, it runs on the opposite schedule than most other professional leagues in the world because of the weather here. But it was great to see you out on the road. Obviously, I was able to hit the road quite a bit last year, and it's good to see our Jackals fans still being able to do that. I mean, it's one thing to do Austin and Houston, but it's another thing when you spend your hard-earned money and you head abroad and you really let people know that we're serious about our team here. We're serious about our rugby, and it's always a great time. And anybody that comes and visits to Choctaw, you're always welcome. I mean, come and see what we're doing here. It's an absolutely great facility, centered in an entertainment district, unseen in a lot of places, because you don't really have that. You don't have, 100,000 seat stadium, a baseball stadium, Six Flags. We have everything kind of right there in one little pocket, and it's good for us to see. It looks good on us as an organization and team. So let's go ahead and just get into it, man. Let's get into 14-11, the final, our very first victory in the history of Major League Rugby, in the history of professional rugby in Dallas. It was a long time coming. And it wasn't an easy game. I mean, it was a lot of frustration. I was hoarse by the end of it. The 2 tries, obviously, coming off of hopefully future USA Eagle Sam Gola and Canadian South African Dewey Kutsia being enough to seal the victory.
Yeah, we talked about how good Connor Robinson has been, and Dewey coming in and getting that try this week, when Connor's really been playing second fiddle the last few weeks. I think was really important for him.
It's quite amazing that we have 3 hookers. We've got obviously the guy with the most experience being Thomas Baravale, who is absolutely amazing in his own right. URC veteran, heaps of experience.
There's a difference when he's out there. I mean, the other 2 guys are really good, but there is a difference when he is out there.
But it's not like Dewey having a bit of U20 caps with Canada, Robinson kind of being the up-and-coming, hopefully future USA Eagle. And it's really great to see all 3 of them really, because typically you only got 1 or 2 guys that really do it. And all 3 of our guys are very capable at their job.
Yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to start either of the three.
Any of the three guys,
match.
they could all do it. And, that I think that you kind of look at the glue on that front line, and we've brought him up, Pablo Zeiss. He's kind of been like, he's always been there in that 3 spot, and
I feel like he needs a break. This break is going to be good for him. Because going against his old team in a couple of weeks is going to be brutal.
It's a real treat that we can say that we have 3 hookers that are very capable, because on paper it really should just be Baravale. That's all it should be. But Kutsia and Robinson are both extremely capable.
Hey, let's give credit to the coaching staff on this, because I think they have done a knockout job. And there's one specifically that I think takes most of the credit, but I'll give them all credit for this, is our tight 5 has outplayed themselves this year based on what we would look at on paper and say they were capable of. They have been dominant in terms of just, I would say, general set piece work. So getting lineouts down to the ground. Now, the maul has been off and on, right? Some matches it's been really poor. Some it's been phenomenal, but there's still work to do there. But getting the lineout ball in and down to the ground, and in our scrum, winning our own ball almost every single time, and even getting penalties, has been just an amazing breath of fresh air compared to last year.
And that really was the catalyst for the win yesterday. Obviously, a lock and a prop or a hooker both getting the tries yesterday. That really does say a lot about this team as a whole, that we have really just our record is not indicative of how good this team is whatsoever. We should not be 1-6.
No,
we shouldn't.
And I really think, if we make a couple of plays, we're 3-4, and potentially 4-3 if we had played a little bit of defense in another match and made one play that we probably should have made. We are so close to being 4-3. It's really tough to look at it and say we're 1-6 still. Even with, getting the win at home in front of the home fans is awesome. We had a great experience, lighting up the flares twice during the game. Even though, the green is finally on for my hand. But even with that, we're 1-6. We're second to last now. So but Chicago has a match in hand. We could easily be 3-4. We should probably be 3-4, and easily could be 4-3. And I think we're going to get some more wins. There's still a lot of, I'll call it, hate buzz around not only the league but even in our own fan group. And I get it. Like, it's so painful to watch these losses, watch us kind of play ourselves out of wins is really how I would put it. And we almost played ourselves out of a win last night.
It was, obviously. So we'll get to the main problem afterwards, but we'll talk about an obvious problem that we all noticed, even the people in the stands noticed. And it's a minute and 20 seconds left in the game, and Alejandro Torres kicks the ball away. We're all like, what are you doing? Run the clock down. And obviously this was something, we found out this is kind of just the coaching style that they're used to doing. And, much to the chagrin of us as fans, it added a bit more of a cliffhanger than what we wanted. Because I'm sitting here we're going to lose this game because of that.
I thought that winger was breaking away and he was going to go score in the corner and we were going to lose.
And it didn't happen. And then we get the line, or was it a scrum? And then
it was a line out, and we turned the ball over at the line out. They went down and we covered up the ball. So,
and then you have the bit of delay because the official was making sure it was time.
Yeah, and I wonder, he was making sure it was time, but I think he was also checking with his assistants to see if there was any potential penalty.
Yeah.
Often, lineouts, you're not, the main ref, you're not going to see everything that happens there. So you do have to get some help from your touch to see, did a guy come in from the side? Because that often happens, especially when the maul gets moving. Somebody comes in from the side, turns it, and that's what causes it to go down. But the Jackals did a phenomenal job defending that. Defending for their life. Let's be honest. I mean, I think it was at about the 4 meter line when they brought that thing down. So
it was also just the fact that Sam Malcolm, who actually missed a kick yesterday, instead of kicking for the tie, kicked for the corner. They had everything they wanted the win just as bad as we did, and it unfortunately didn't work out for them. Unfortunately, it worked out for us. And the atmosphere, as soon as that whistle was blown, I've got no shame in saying it. I had tears in my eyes.
It was almost like winning like an NBA championship or the Super Bowl or something. Shield. It was crazy.
It was just the feeling. And then the players meeting in a circle, saying a few things, coming up to us fans. I was just saying thank you to so many of them.
Yeah.
And you could see, especially like Danny Christensen, like just absolutely, like it was like winning a championship to him, because I think he knew how much this meant to the fans. Alex Tucci, another guy who's been here since the beginning. It was like the guys that had been here since the beginning, it really hit them the hardest.
Yeah.
And it was just an amazing feeling to get that first victory and to get that monkey off of our back, as they say. But, it's not all great feelings. Obviously, the officiating once again last night being extremely bad.
Yeah, and I will say, I admit, I thought it was Summers that was out there. He was actually in the booth as the TMO. Well, booth, he's probably virtual, but he was the TMO. It was Lash who was out there. And if you look at them side by side, they're very similar looking gentlemen. So I apologize to Lash for that, thinking he was Summers, and apologize to Summers for thinking he was out on the pitch. But again, I think, and I talked about this with a few people last night, I think we are still missing 3 or 4 referees that would otherwise be out there, who have been they're on Sevens duty. They've been on Six Nations duty, other international play duty. So, I hope that we get some of those referees back, because right now it's not been great. And it's not just our matches. I know, we are focused on our matches, but watching other matches, talking to other people around the league, it's a common problem. And I mean, it just means like we need more referees. More referees are going to push the quality of refereeing above, and it's only going to get better. And hopefully, we're able to produce more referees in the future. I mean, it's basically the same issue we have with coaches. We don't have enough coaches. There's not one American head coach in this league.
We talked about this last night. Yeah, how the last one was Atlanta, and now he's actually coaching USA Eagles. Yeah. And, it's something that we've discussed, something new for me, actually, that like I was one of those people that thought, man, you need more internationals. But this season, it has become painfully obvious that you look at the top teams in this league, and their top guys aren't all international guys. Their top guys are USA Eagles.
Yeah.
USA Eagles are repping in this league very, very strongly. And, for me, this being my home now, it's – I can't complain. It's great to see USA-born players or USA-qualified Eagles out here in this league and making a difference maker in every game. Sad to say, obviously, with the struggles of Canadian rugby, we have seen that in the last 2 weeks, that Canadian rugby, not so much going in the right direction, unfortunately. No. We saw a lot of them last week and this week, and I do tip my hat to the Arrows. They did play a good game. Just at the end of the day, it was our time to finally get that dub, and I can't complain one bit.
Yeah, so let's talk about that part of it. I thought Toronto now let's give out the facts. 13 injuries. So they signed 2 guys within the last week and a half who have not played in MLR all season. So we need to take that into consideration. This is a team that was really beat up, has been
basically
on the road
us last year. Basically
has been on the road for a long time.
Yeah.
And they're ready to be home, and they don't have a break for another like 3 or 4 weeks. So I feel bad for their situation right now, especially they've got 1 win, and it was a 1-point win against Chicago that it was extremely close as well. And so they're just having a tough season, and I don't know how that works in the future, because they have really struggled. In fact, they've lost 4 of their best Canadians to New England. I got to see quite a few of them play last weekend. And so this is a beat up Toronto team that we beat. And to be honest, Toronto did not help themselves, especially in the first half. I thought in the first half, man, they definitely could have had 2 or 3 scores. They had a lot of line breaks that they probably should have scored off of if they were a well engaged team. It just looked like there were some guys out there who were just tired for them. So take what you want from that. I thought we played horribly in the first half. Sorry. I mean, we got to win, but I thought we played horribly in the first half. We were very lucky to be in that game at half-time. We
had that line break by Ali Torres in the game, and he's completely he's got 1 guy in front of him. If there's 3 people he could offload it to, and he offloads it to the ground.
Valentini did the same thing. I don't know if that was Valentini on that play, but I remember him.
You're right. It's not so Valentini.
Yeah, I think he went weak side from a 5-meter ruck and cut past whoever was the defender on that outside. And then literally he just threw it in the air to nobody in particular. And I think the biggest problem was the 2 guys trying to chase him down to support were both the locks, who were already exhausted
already. Yeah.
And so you've got to just realize who you're running with, and slow down and get in position to give them an offload. If you've got to almost stop just to get, an outside runner, an inside runner on it, cut back in a little bit, something, but he just threw it up to the air to nothing. That was tough to watch. I thought there weren't just singular plays that were terrible. I just thought that we were just sloppy all around. Now, I will say our defense stuck with it. It wasn't pretty, but we stuck with it. We made tackles when we had to, and that kept us in the game. I think if we don't make those tackles, I think Toronto runs away with it, sadly. Offensively, we've got to figure something out. I don't know what's going on.
We're not going to win games 14-10. It's just not going to
happen. This is a match that probably we should win 28-10.
If that, yeah. I mean, if you looked at their history, they were getting blown out like in the losses we've had. They were scoring 3 points and giving up 30 plus.
Yeah.
This was their closest loss they've had all season. Before this, it was a 17-10 loss they had. There are 2 other they had some really lopsided losses, much like we did last season.
Yep.
And like I said, we should have beaten these guys. They were not that good, obviously, with the injuries, the lack of experience, but also, like I said, just the grind of being on the road this long.
And there's no excuse. There was no weather to excuse. It was beautiful.
Perfect night.
Perfect weather. No wind, 72, 73 degrees, literally perfect rugby weather out the ballpark. Great crowd. And, we're healthy. Even Khalsa is healthy. He didn't make the 23. So we've got a healthy team. So I don't want to point fingers at anybody, but to me, this team just isn't playing a brand of rugby that is going to be successful for the talent that we have, if that makes sense.
Well, I think it's also the league itself. This is not a defense first league. This is a lot of firepower. I mean, you look at the top teams and they run the score up. And I mean, especially for the local fans here, it's more akin to if you're a hockey fan, Ken Hitchcock. Ken Hitchcock was defense first for the Dallas Stars. They won games 1-0, 2-1.
That's rare nowadays.
If you look at the NHL now, it's a lot of 7-5, 7-2, 5-2. And that's where Major League Rugby is now. It's not a defense first league anymore. It's
let me give you examples of scores this weekend. So just today, Houston beat Chicago 38-21. NOLA lost to Seattle 36-35. New York beat Rugby ATL 31-20. And the Legion beat Old Glory DC 48-26. We can't score 14 points and expect to win. We literally would have gotten beat by every other team this weekend. Every other team in the league this weekend with 14 points.
Yeah. And obviously the offensive identity of this team is still remaining to be seen. The defensive identity is not only secured, but if you look at the tackle counts, it's very much set in stone, the defensive identity of the Dallas Jackals. It's just the offensive identity. We just don't have it yet.
And I would say, and I love some of the young guys, smaller young guys who we have on the roster, especially at the wings. But you bring in those big, brutal wings that we've had the last couple of weeks, and you see the difference that it makes defensively. Now, offensively, maybe that's part of it, right? We don't have the Zoomers in our back three like we've had in the past. So there's kind of a give and take to that, right? And so we don't have an Ed Fideau back there. We don't have one of those guys who's
Christian Dyer.
We don't got a 6'2", 220, 230 guy who runs a 4-4. We don't have one of those guys. We've either got the 6'2", 230 guy who runs a 4'9", but tackles the hell out of people. Or we've got the guy who's 5'10", 180, who runs a 4'3", but is not the best tackler in the world. So, it is what it is right now. And I think one of the things we had talked about before that I think, is important, and you brought it up already, how many USA Eagles are running this league? The best teams have a bunch of USA Eagles or internet Canadian internationals that matter playing for them. New England, for example.
Yeah.
But we do not have one USA Eagle on the roster right now.
Yet.
But that's part of it, is we've got a lot of young guys who are just not as experienced, and maybe that's just what's showing right now against even a team like Toronto that's beaten up. They've got a lot of experience on that Toronto side, even though they had brought in some inexperienced players to fill in on injuries. You could see the difference in the experience of, especially in kicking game, when to kick, where to kick, how to do it.
Yeah, Sam Malcolm was amazing.
Their number 9 was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I thought he was probably my man of the match for them. He was so good. And I just thought, we just still feel very flat on offense, and I just hope they figure out something. Remember when we thought the biggest worry was defense at the beginning of the season? What?
Or the bench. We thought
they fixed that thing so quick, but then we can't score.
Yeah. It's been an interesting time, obviously, for us as fans of this team. But it's a good feeling right now, obviously, with that first dub. Finally. For those of you that weren't able to make it out last night, these were handed out after the game. Absolutely awesome. I'm going to frame this bad boy, and it's going to go here in the studio, obviously.
I want to see it behind you next time.
Definitely, man. We'll have to do that. But, so let's go ahead. 2 weeks. Yes, 2 more weeks. Let's go ahead and get our 3 stars of the match. If you will, sir, if you want to go ahead and take the honors first, Rick.
Sure. So I'm going to give it to Zeiss, Gola, obviously, oh my lord, and I'm going to give it to Satama. Hey, Keith, what were your 3 stars of the game?
Starting in no particular order, I've got Captain Geronimo Gomez Vara putting in another prop for scoring the first try of the match, future USA Eagle, hopefully. And my final star is the winning scorer, Dewey Cutsia. Those would be my 3
So you're going with
stars
those try scores. I feel you. I love what Cutsia did, especially consider what we talked about earlier, the fact we've got 3 great hookers. Vara, we haven't really talked about him much this year. And before we close up here, I just wanted to say that, bringing him in has been huge for us. Having somebody on that other flank that is just all over the place, kind of like Conrado is normally. We have not talked about Rura nearly as much as we did last year. And I think part of that is Vara is just as good, maybe if not better, which is crazy because Rura is so good. And having a healthy Boyson has been huge.
He's been unreal this year.
The number of tackles is crazy. Now, that's the least popular chart to be at the top of, because you don't want to be saying we're sitting there tackling people constantly every game. Means we're on defense way too much, which we are, obviously. I was just seeing 7 matches, we have 92 points for. In 6 matches, San Diego has 193 points. So that's where we sit right now. We are still a long way from being where the top teams in this league are. So there's work to be done.
Definitely. Well, I think that'll wrap up this episode of the Jackal Den podcast, made by the fans for the fans. So you guys keep your eyes peeled, and we'll talk to you again soon. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Perfect. All right. I am going to save both these. I'll put it together, and I'll probably have it out tonight. What's up?
Okay, we're good.